Happy Friday, everybody. The Friday before pre-release weekend, I always like to do my pre-release guide. So we'll be talking about the set's mechanics and rules, the archetype themes and fixing, as well as the common instance for Tarkir Dragonstorm. So first up, we're going to have 5 different clans, if you will, to choose from. So you're going to get 5 play boosters, and then you're going to get 1 clan-themed Tarkir Dragonstorm pre-release booster. And the special pack is going to contain 1 of 9 rares or 1 mythic rare that is tied specifically to that pack's clan. So you don't have to play within the clan's pack that you're playing, but you should have more like a specific rare or mythic towards that color. And so there's 5 of them, and so this is going to be that's the primary thing of this set, is that it's going to be a 3-color set. There are a couple of archetypes within that are just 2-color, but you're primarily going to be doing a like 2-color with a splash in one of these 3-color spaces. So the first one that we're going to talk about is Abzan, and I like to cover the rules of the mechanics first, and we'll kind of do this with each clan got its own mechanic. So Abzan is Endure, and Abzan is white, green, black, and Endure is a keyword action that a creature takes, and it is followed by a number. So as a creature endures in, you choose to either put in +1/+1 counters on that creature, or you create an in white spirit creature token. And what's cool about this is if an endure ability resolves while the creature isn't on the battlefield, then you create the spirit token. So you don't get 2 for 1 trying to put your tokens onto something. And this really solves the problem that the counter builds typically have of actually having a creature on the board. So I think it's a really cool mechanic. We've also got Jeskai, which is the blue, red, white, and its mechanic is Flurry. Flurry is an ability word, and each Flurry ability has a different effect. So each Flurry ability is a triggered ability that triggers whenever you cast your second spell in a turn. It doesn't matter what happened to the first spell, it may have resolved or been countered, and may even still be on the stack. The Flurry ability will resolve before the ability, the spell that caused it to trigger. So note that Flurry abilities can trigger only once each turn, and creatures with Flurry abilities have to be under your control to see that the spell is being cast. They don't have to see the first spell, though. And so, for example, like if Devoted Duelist is your second spell in a turn, it won't trigger itself. But if it was your first spell and it resolves before you cast your second, it will. We've also got Sultai, which is going to be Renew, and Sultai is black, green, blue. And Renew is an activated ability that can only be activated from the graveyard. And each Renew ability has a different effect, although they do have some things in common. All of the Renew abilities include exiling the card with Renew as part of the activation cost, and all of them can be activated only as a sorcery. All Renew effects also involve putting counters on creatures, often +1/+1 counters, sometimes others. And sometimes there are also additional effects that go along with the Renew. And then Mardu, red, white, black, is Mobilize. And Mobilize is a triggered ability that triggers whenever a creature with the ability attacks. The number after Mobilize indicates how many tapped and attacking 1/1 red warrior creature tokens you'll create as the ability resolves. And once Mobilize triggers, it doesn't matter what happens to the creature that attacked. You'll create the tokens even if that creature is no longer on the battlefield as the ability resolves, and you'll sacrifice the tokens at the beginning of the next instep even if that creature isn't around at that time. Like other creatures that enter tapped and attacking, the tokens were never declared as attackers, so they won't trigger any whenever a creature attacks abilities. Temur is green, blue, red, and Harmonize is its mechanic. Harmonize allows you to cast a card from your graveyard by paying its Harmonize cost rather than paying its mana cost. In addition, if you cast it this way, you may tap an untapped creature you control as an additional cost to cast that spell. If you do, the total amount of mana you pay is reduced by that creature's power. For example, if you cast Roamer's Routine from your graveyard and also tap a creature you control with power 3, you will pay 1 green. 1 colorless and a green. The cost reduction applies only to the generic mana in the cost, so even if you tapped a creature with power 15, you'd still have to pay 1 green to cast Roamer's Routine from your graveyard. You don't have to tap a creature if you don't want to, or can't, and in which case you'll just pay the full Harmonize cost. And then we have a couple mechanics that are not specific to the color pairs. We also have A new mechanic is Omen. So some dragon cards in the set have their own personal Omen, which is an instant or sorcery on the lower left of the card, similar to adventure spells. Omens have their own name, type line, complete with the new subtype Omen, mana cost, and rules text. The dragon's abilities are on the right side of the text box, and the name, the mana cost, the type line, power and toughness are all in the usual positions. As you're casting a card with Omen, you choose which part you're casting, the creature spell or the Omen. If you cast a creature card as an Omen spell, in this case Skimmering Strike, you only use the Omen's characteristics, so you would pay 1 blue, and it will be an instant spell with mana value 2. As an Omen resolves, you follow its instructions, then shuffle the Omen card into your library. Note that the shuffling part happens only if the Omen resolves. If it's countered or otherwise fails to resolve, you won't shuffle it into your library. If an Omen card is in your graveyard, hand, or library, it has only the characteristics of the creature card. Ignore the Omen and all of its text. So if an effect allows you to search your library for a creature card, you could find the Durgar Island Dragon, but if you were searching for an instant card, you couldn't find Skimmering Strike. The same is true for the creature on the battlefield. Durgar Island Dragon's mana value is 6, for example. And we also have Behold. So several cards in the set ask you to behold a dragon, often as an additional cost to cast a spell. To behold a dragon, you can either choose a dragon you control on the battlefield or reveal a dragon card from your hand. Some spells may have an additional effect if a dragon was beheld. This applies no matter which manner of beholding you choose, and it applies no matter what happened to the dragon after it was beheld. And since they're trying to achieve a 3-color space, they're bringing in 2-brid mana as a way to kind of increase the flexibility of your mana base. And if you haven't played with 2-brid mana before, we'll cover some of the oddities of it. So you can pay for 2-brid mana either by paying the color of the mana indicated or by paying 2 colorless. For example, to cast Gurmag Nightwatch, you could pay a black, a green, and a blue, 2 colorless, a green, and a blue, or 4 colorless and a blue, or 6 colorless. And there's also a couple of other combinations. So no matter how you pay for each individual symbol, that symbol contributes 2 to the card's mana value. So Gurmag Nightwatch, the mana value is 6 no matter how you pay for it. Similarly, Gurmag Nightwatch is black, green, and blue, even if you didn't pay those colors of mana to cast it. And then also, Surveil is somewhat of an evergreen mechanic, but just in case this is your first time playing in a pre-release, Surveil has returned, and if you, so basically what you do is you look at Surveil in, look at the mini number of cards from the top of your library, and you put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest on the top of your library in any order. And Surveil is a great way for clearing out cards that you don't want to draw, setting up cards that you do want to draw, and even filling your graveyard for useful things like the Graveyard Matters mechanics for the Renew and the Harmonize in this set. And then just a quick little nod to my constructed players out there too. Mox Jasper and Ugin Eye of the Storms has got a lot of attention right now. Mox Jasper definitely hints towards a dragon deck in constructed, being able to tap, add 1 mana of any color legal in standard on turn 1 for 0 mana. Allows you to ramp quite nicely. And then Ugin just, Ugin's Ugin, legendary planeswalker, colorless. Definitely going to be a lot of attention on this card. So just thought I would point them out. And now let's get into the actual archetype themes. So first up, let's cover Abzan. So Abzan's mechanic, again, is Endure. I think it's going to lend itself quite nicely to a mid-range strategy. So white, black, green is a creature-centric strategy centered around Endure, which puts tokens on creatures or creates spirit tokens. The signpost uncommons are Armament Dragon and Stalwart Successor. I will leave it here for you to read. The goal is to outsize your opponents with +1/+1 counters or to outflank them with spirit tokens, and I suggest that being in base Golgari or black-green is probably the best home for this archetype because it has the most counter synergies. And then we've got the Jeskai Flurry. Jeskai, or blue, red, white, is, I think, looking like a pretty good tempo strategy. It's all about casting 2 spells in 1 turn, so you definitely want to focus on keeping your curve low. And the signpost uncommons we got are Jeskai Brushmaster and Corey Mountain Stalwart, which are, you may notice, payoffs rather than enablers. And I also don't necessarily think that Boros is the best place to be for this archetype. I think it actually works potentially a little bit better in blue-red. And the reason why I think that Izzet or blue-red will work a little bit better is you need cheap cards, and specifically cheap cards that draw cards, which I think you have more availability in blue. So I think you'll have to lean the most heavily into the Omen mechanic, since several of the Omen dragons allow you to draw quite cheaply at common, technically a rummage, where you discard and draw, but good for double spelling. And then Izzet also has a lot of harmonized cards, which allow you to recast them from your graveyard, which could help you double spell off of the stuff that you've been discarding. Sultai also is doing your classic Sultai value thing with the renew mechanic. So you're looking for a mid-range strategy where it's kind of the graveyard matters, outvalue your opponent. And renew and harmonize both give you value from your graveyard. So you'll want to look for cards that self-mill or have surveil. And the signpost uncommons are Keru Goldkeeper and Kishla Skimmer, which again are payoffs instead of enablers. Although I guess technically Goldkeeper does have the renew mechanic. I do also agree that the Simic or green-blue has the most synergies for renew and harmonize, and the best self-mill that I saw, at least at common, was in green. Mardu, or red, white, black, is looking like the aggro strategy of the format. So Mardu's mechanic is mobilize, and is a token-based strategy based off of the mobilize mechanic. And the tokens are temporary, so they make excellent sacrifice fodder. And the signpost uncommons are Bone Cairn Butcher and Hardened Tactician. I do agree that the Orsov or black-white is a pretty decent base. Since the tokens are temporary, it's a little bit harder to go wide, but I could see a Boros red-white strategy that focuses more purely on aggro working quite well, and I think this archetype has a lot of flexibility in how you build it. I could see going for red-white aggro that then turns into black-white attrition for the mid-range, or for the mid-game, and pretty excited about this one just personally. And then the Temur Harmonize also, I think, lends itself to a pretty good mid-range strategy. The green-blue-red archetype cares the most about creatures' power, so look for cheap creatures with high power, like 3/1s that can allow you to ramp into your Harmonized mechanic. And you'll also notice that the signpost uncommons here are Mammoth Bellow and Glacial Dragon Hunt, and looking through the Temur cards, I think that this archetype looks the hungriest for mana, so look for cards that help you ramp or have land advantage. Also, one thing to note about red instead of black, since the harmonized one is similar to the renew, you're both kind of playing a graveyard matters strategy. The common red dragons have rummage for their omen side, which I think will be pretty important for getting this archetype to have the cards that you want in the graveyard. It also could just be that they end up double spelling relatively well, so obviously we'll have to kind of wait to see how the set plays out. We also got a Dragonstorm cycle, so there is each color got an enchantment Dragonstorm that has synergies with dragons, so there's definitely a 5-color dragon deck that is out there waiting to be built. Okay, and now for the fixing. So Temur, or the red, green, blue, has the best fixing at common, at least at common in the set. And you've got, like Roost Seek being able to search your deck for a land helps you get that land advantage that I was talking about. We also see the Campus Guide reprinted in the form of like the Embermouth Sentinel, Compass Gnome. This sort of thing has been in a lot of sets before. We only have one treasure producer at common, which is the Meticulous Artisan, and then we have the Mana Rock at 3 colorless, as usual, for the Dragonstorm Globe. As far as the lands go, at basic we have Evolving Wilds, as well as 2-color tap lands that gain life, one in each color pair. If we extend things to uncommon, then we start to see the tap lands that tap for 3 color lands, and so we are going to get sort of the triomes, if you will, that they're not 3 basic land types for domain, but they do tap for the 3 different colors. And then on for each of the we have one for each of the tribes, and then at rare we have the utility lands, which are all we have 1 in each color. And the last thing that I'd like to just talk about briefly before wrapping things up here is the instant speed interaction that you can hope to play around from your opponent. I like to focus on this more so than removal strictly, just so that you can anticipate what your opponent is going to play. I think is where a lot of who wins and who loses comes down to how well you play around your opponent's interaction. So in white, we have white and black have the best removal, so it's very good at removing creature-based threats, even large toughness threats. And then blue can return creatures to their owner's hand, prevent them from untapping or reduce their power, but it does struggle to find permanent solutions to those threats. And we do have a flash creature that 1-drop flash creature is always a fun time to play with and to play around. And then we also have so black, like I mentioned, is really good removal. Combat tricks as well to keep in mind, like they can give the indestructible, and then red can get rid of creatures through direct damage, making high toughness creatures a problem, which is pretty typical for red. Nothing really of note to nothing different than what we've seen before. And then the last but not least is green, which has the ability to destroy artifacts and enchantments outright, but relies primarily on its own creatures to remove opponents' creatures through bite and fight spells, which we also have seen before and is kind of, nothing new to report in the instances for this set. So thanks for listening. Just leave you here with this beautiful work of art. I really think they did a good job on this one. I can see this one being a poster in my youth. So thanks for listening to my ramblings. I hope you have a fun time at pre-release. I hope it kind of helps you acquaint you to the set. And let me know what you think in the comments below, what you're excited to play, which clan seems the most appealing. Because for the pre-release, if you were on top of it, you got to actually say which one you wanted to be. I did not, so we'll just see whatever I end up with, right? Yeah. And then I will be back. I'm going to be taking a quick little break. So I'll be back in about 10 days to do the first week's kind of breakdown of how Tarkir Dragonborn is changing up the meta for best of 1 standard on Arena. Take care, everybody.